I set up this webinar to show you all LiveCosts. So basically, the context for this meeting was, if you've all noticed in your version 14 of Cubit, you will have a new export button under the data tab. And that export was to this software called LiveCosts. Now, we had a bit of feedback from that. A bunch of customers got in contact, wanted to chat about it. So we thought the best thing to do would be to get LiveCosts to come in and chat about it, rather than trying to explain it ourselves. So that's why we have Kieran here. Kieran is the co-founder of LiveCosts. So he's going to take you guys through about an hour of showing you LiveCosts from the very basics all the way through to some of the brand new features that he has to show you today, which are pretty exciting. Hopefully, it'll give you a good idea and context of what LiveCosts can do if you purchase it, and add it on to using your Cubit estimating already. You obviously can take trials, ask us questions during this webinar. There's also a pilot program we'll talk about at the end. So there's lots of stuff you can do to try and figure out if LiveCosts is good for you. Okay. So with that said, I'll hand you over to Kieran, and Kieran's going to take you through the software now.
Right, beautiful. Thanks very much, Stephen. I'll just share my screen. And you might just confirm, Stephen, that you can see that, yeah?
Yeah, all good. We can see your screen.
Fantastic. Okay. Morning, everyone. As Stephen said, I'm Kieran. I'm one of the co-founders here at LiveCosts. For those who don't know about us, we're based here in headquartered in Dublin. We've got an office in London. We've also got an office in Australia, and we've recently partnered with the guys in Buildsoft to, I suppose, push out some of the integrations that we have. So we've about 20,000 users now using LiveCosts. We sort of sit in between the estimate and the final account. And I'm just going to walk through basically the main integration now that's available through Cubit as well. So I'll just frame up essentially where this sort of lives. So on one side of the business, you guys will all be familiar with Cubit, and you've sort of set an estimating stack within the company. A lot of companies that come to us on the flip side of that is basically other systems that are also financial, which are the accounting systems. So that can be an ERP, it can be one of the popular sort of off-the-shelf solutions like Zero Sage and QuickBooks. But a lot of the time, those two worlds are disconnected and are being managed in the real life project through spreadsheets. So what we do is we sort of take the estimates and we create a real live environment, and we use smart technology like AI to basically connect costs back to the estimates essentially, while also connecting that through to the final account. So it basically streamlines the finances. On one side of the company, you're going to have your estimating in Cubit, which is basically going to tell us what's going to happen by predicting the future. The accounts team a lot of the time are reporting back on the past, and that can be 30 days behind the event. LiveCosts is that connector that sort of sits in between the middle there, where we push these estimates in from Cubit. We'll collect all the data, and then we can sync it across and have that connection point into accounts as well. So it allows the team to collaborate. Essentially, we can have anyone in the team can have access to LiveCosts, and we can set permissions within LiveCosts that make sense to that particular role. So it does become the operational tool from a job cost and a tracking perspective. How it works is everything revolves around that project. So the first step for you guys will be having that estimate in Cubit and being able to take it then into LiveCosts. So this is LiveCosts. This is what we call a projects dashboard. On our projects dashboard, we have the Cubit estimating import, where we'll just basically take that file and we'll just drop it into LiveCosts. I just created one a little bit earlier because I wanted to put a little bit of data behind it, but it is as simple as that, as just uploading that file. Now, when that file comes in, we'll have all the headings and the budgets. Okay, so underneath each heading will be the budget, that was taken off these estimates. Okay. Now, what we do is we then use a very simple traffic light system to track all the different costs that are happening against that particular estimate. Okay, so traffic light system being any green costs will represent invoices that have basically come in, could be from suppliers, subcontractors, so on and so forth. Your ambers are your committeds, and we'll also be able to forecast off the back of that. Okay, so let's run a real life example. So we've brought in our budget. Let's just say, for example, we want to order, make an order for the plastering section of this particular project. In LiveCosts, as I mentioned, some AI, right? One use of AI is what we call the materials catalog. Okay, so there's a couple of examples here that we can work with. I might go out pre-project and I might want to, agree rates on this particular project with a supplier. I can upload those rates into LiveCosts, and I'll show you when we start processing an invoice against it, how we can actually check every invoice line item against what's in my catalog. So this catalog acts as a material database. It allows us to collect data from suppliers. Data could be coming in on price lists. Data could be coming in on quotes. Data could be coming in on invoices. And it just gathers all that information. It allows us to search for that information, compare suppliers. If I'm doing variations on a project, I have access to all my material data. Okay, so this is your materials database, and it's completely based on your material, not like what we call a global view where we're sort of aggregating the data across different companies. This is purely based on your own company data that's coming in off your invoices, your quotes, and your price lists, if they're project-related price lists as well. Okay, that's one example. The other example is maybe I didn't do that to start the project, and I want to go out and start requesting quotes now for the plastering order on this particular project. Okay, so what I can do is I can use AI to help me do this. Okay, so one example, maybe I've gone out to one supplier and I've got the first quote in, but I could also use the catalog to build this up. So basically what I'm trying to do is step one is gather the line items that I'm looking for to go out to market and get some pricing. So what I can do is I can send this in via what we call an AI drop. So I'm taking that quotation that I was just showing you, it's basically this guy here, and I'm just going to drop it into LiveCosts like so. LiveCosts will then do an extraction of all the data. So it takes all the data off that quotation and it tells me how much that particular price costs. And then the second step is it allows me then to send this out to other suppliers. Okay, so here I can select what suppliers I want to send this to. I'll have all the contacts and different reps and trade counters set up here. So I'll pick a couple of suppliers, a couple of contacts, and I'll go with 3 suppliers in this case. Okay, so this is 3 suppliers I'm going to send this to. I can tell them what project it relates to, which obviously will set up all the different delivery addresses. That's linked up to just have a simple pin with Google Maps, so all that can be there. I can tell them when I need a reply by, so I need to make a quick decision on this by Friday, but I don't need it on site until the end of the month, so on and so forth. I can pop my email together from here, and I can send that out as an RFQ. Now, the supplier will open that, and they'll be able to decline that, or they can basically accept it. Accepting it means that they just do the same thing as the drag and drop. They just literally can drop the quotation in the PDF. It's very simple on their side. We don't have the luxury of waiting on these on this particular webinar, so I'll do the drag and drop for this. Okay, so when they do this, the quote section, all they'll do is they'll basically have an open drop section on their side where they simply just drop in their quote. Okay, so what we can do is we can just do that for them on this side, and doing that for them would also mean that maybe they didn't do it right and they sent it to us by email or sent it to someone else in the company, and I've got to go back in and do this. So as we're adding the quotes in, all we've got to do is basically drag and drop them in. Okay, so that's one quote that's come back in. Okay, second quote might come in from our second supplier, and again I'm just going to drop that in. Right, that's the second one. We now have 2 quotes that have come back, and we're going to do one more then from the final supplier. Save that one, and then we'll get a tour quote in then from supplier number 3. Same thing. I'll just drop that in. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're allowing LiveCosts now through AI to basically do an alignment of all this data. Okay, so it does what's called item alignment. So on this quote, we might have product codes selected by one supplier and descriptions, which will not align to what the other 2 suppliers might call this. But AI will be smart enough to understand this, that it'll see the descriptions and it will do what's called the item alignment for me. So if I click onto item alignment, it kicks into gear here, alignment in progress, and it's looking to basically join all these dots together for me. What did I call that particular product versus what did the 3 suppliers call that product? Bring that together for me. And what it's done there is match the 18 of 80 in there. So I call that plastering sand, they call it different things, but it's been smart enough to recognize that. If I thought I was wrong, I can just drag and drop them. Okay, I can just basically move. That's actually not correct. I can move that around, but you know, it's you can see there, it's taken that 80 of 18. Okay, now this is where it does the comparison then. So it builds a comparison table for me. It basically says, here's all the items that you went out to market for. Here's the the replies that we got, and here's the best prices. Okay, here's all the best prices. It does a combination, so of basically saying that the best price that we can get today is by creating a combination purchase order, which would mean that we should split this between two suppliers. If you want to go with one supplier, this supplier is basically the best price. This supplier came in second, this supplier came in third. Now, if that's my preferred supplier, and maybe that's the one that's closest to the project, and I'd rather go with that supplier if I could, what I can do here is I can basically do a draft negotiation email. Okay, draft negotiation email. Again, AI is just looking at the products that they're out on and building an email for me to say, hey, I'd like to go with you, but you're out on these particular items. Okay, so we can do that from there. Or I could just go with the best price. And once I press this create a purchase order, it basically just turns that quote, takes them line items across, and now it's ready to be a purchase order. Okay, so now I've selected this as to be a purchase order. I've just flipped the quote over. It's going to be a quote, or it's going to be a purchase order. Then I can select what project this belongs to. Now, this could have happened at the quotation stage as well. And then I can select what element of the project this belongs to too. So it's now linking that as an order back to the original budget that came in from Cubit. And I can also do an option to track the delivery. I can send an email to the supplier. The delivery address can be set up from the project setup, and that will now be sent out as a purchase order from LiveCosts. So what happens is a PO number gets generated automatically. But from the project's perspective, LiveCosts will recognize that as a cost, and it will create a cost on the project for me. It will send that cost up to the budget for me, and it uses that in that amber status. Okay, so that purchase order has now gone to the project. If I click into the project and we look at the plastering section of the project, we'll see now that we have a new cost in plastering, and it's the amber cost. And if I click into this amber cost here on this internal and external plastering section, that is a materials order that was raised by me today, okay, from that supplier. So it just collects them as the committed cost on the project as well. Now, what we can also do with that is we can follow that through to site, and LiveCosts gives me an option to do some of this on the mobile app, okay? So on our mobile app, we have the ability to do POs. So if you wanted some of the site team to be able to do their own orders, we can do that. So we can do stuff like value caps. So, one of the guys, that contracts manager is okay to raise material orders up to a value of whatever, 500 quid, £1,000, whatever it might be. The other option is we can use the requisition process. Now, given that we're using AI, we have guys that are taking photographs of handwritten lists on a slab on the wall, right, of what they're looking for, and that's creating a requisition back to site. But in the requisition, we can also give them access to our catalog. So the guys can use the same AI scan to take a picture of a list, send it to me, and I'll go and get pricing on it. Or they can use our catalog to say, if I'm on site, can you go and get me blocks? And I also need some whatever bits and pieces. So they can see what data that we have in our catalog. They can send me a list, and then I can go get pricing on it, or I can make that order from it. So requisitions can be taken from the site. The other nice feature on the app is just tracking of the delivery. So when that delivery lands on site, our guys can just literally take out their phone. Okay, so we're going to say this supplier here is the supplier that's landed on site. We'll show them the open order on their project. Now, because we used the nice drag and drop there, the line items came off the quote, the line items moved onto the PO, and then AI will be smart enough to understand, well, we can make a delivery checklist from that. So what I can do with this is it just creates a simple checklist where I can call these items off. Flick them off, or I can just press one simple button, which is I'm completing this delivery. In other words, I'm telling you that I have everything on site, okay? So it allows us just to confirm that these orders are being delivered. What that will do is send LiveCosts an instant notification to tell us that event has happened. So we'll just get a little ping in there. If I'm looking after the procurement, I'll get a little ping in here of my delivery. It'll tell me that the plastering has been delivered out to this project by this supplier, order raised by this guy, order received by this guy, and everything has been delivered. Okay, so in this delivery section, it's more than just ticking off confirmations of orders. As we're sending orders out of LiveCosts and specifying when we expect to see stuff on site, it is building that delivery schedule for me too. So if I need to search what items have been delivered by this supplier or this date range, or show me all the items that have come in so far for the plastering or the block stage or just this project alone. Okay, everything's basically showing me what's down for delivery or what's been part delivered. So issues we're having with site that hasn't been fully delivered, all that stuff is there. And obviously when we're doing claims and stuff like that, and we want to actually see value of delivery, we can run what's called delivery item checks as well, where we'll actually be able to see the value of goods that have been delivered to a project as well. So it's basically tracking every single item that's gone to a project as well. So delivery section just allows us to follow these orders to the next step. Now, where this ties together lovely is when, because we're using AI now, we can start to process this all together. So this is what's called an AI inbox. When we now receive the invoices from the suppliers, we can simply just drag and drop the invoices into LiveCosts like so. Same as the RFQ process, same as if I was just in the PO on the fly. Again, we're just going to let LiveCosts do the heavy lifting of all this document. And then what we've done here is we've just trained a piece of AI to basically go in and understand the data in terms of what needs to be extracted, and then what data do we need to basically process these invoices. So this is the invoice that I've dropped in, and then on the right hand side is what we call a summary box, which is basically pulling the key data points from that particular document for me, such as who's the supplier, what type of document is it, is there a PO number, and then obviously the line items. Then back to collecting good data, we're going to collect these line items as well. So what we've done is basically trained a piece of AI to get this to a very quick and an accurate approval for me as well. Okay, so once I press on that accept button, the invoice will come in here. And then it's going to walk it through a very simple little process, just doing some checks for me. So check number one is the PO, which is basically connected to the invoice automatically. Again, the reconciliation, the little green traffic light, is going to tell me what's happening between the invoice and the PO. If I click on that, it basically says that they've been reconciled automatically because the two values aligned, and it's giving me a little green tick. So LiveCosts sees no issue between the PO and the invoice in this case. Second check, has it been delivered? Green check will indicate that whoever took the delivery in gave me a green tick to tell me that this looks all good. If I click in here, we had a call off situation. It would tell me how many have I ordered versus what's been delivered. And it would basically be counting down then, of course, on what was on the original PO versus what's on site. And then I could see what am I being charged for. Okay, so this is the delivery data then that's coming straight in off the mobile app. Third check is the catalog. Okay, so this is where the materials database comes in, and this is where AI can be really, really clever. So it looks into the catalog first on every single invoice that we process. So basically, we have this big database building up over time. Every time we get a quote in, every time we get an invoice in, this database just gets smarter and smarter all the time. So what it's doing in this case is, sorry, if I go back a step, what it's doing in this case is it's looking into the catalog, it's analyzing these product codes. Again, simple traffic light system, greens being priced down, red's being priced up. So it's giving me an analysis there when we see price increases. So it's basically saying that product code there, this ton bag of sand, if you want to click in here, this is your average price, this is your price today. Here's a graph showing how that product moves over time. Here's all the data points, so on and so forth. Has the price gone down? Has the price gone up? So on and so forth. Okay, so it's just basically giving me an analysis at the product code level. And then on the last stage of this, then we can see here that this is the project it belongs to. This is the element of the project. Now, if I wanted to split that at the point of the purchase order across numerous headings or numerous cost codes or numerous budgets, whatever it might be, I can do that at the point of order, or I could do it at the point of invoice as well. So if I wanted to split these items up across different headings, I can do that. In this case, I'm just adding it to one particular heading as well. Okay. Final step to this is I'm happy with this. So I basically dropped this invoice in, and AI has gone and fetched the PO for me. It's told me whether it's been delivered. It's analyzed all these items, told me whether these prices are on point, whether they're good or not. It's given me the data to collect for future reference. It's job costing this invoice against the correct project and back to the estimate where the PO got generated from. And then the final step to this is we also connect into the accounting software or into the account system. Okay, so I can either approve that and send it into accounts from here, or I can just save it into a documents folder. In this case, I'm connected to Xero. Okay, so Xero being one of the popular accounting products out there, I'm connected to Xero here, so I can just approve this and sync that to Xero. Okay, the other option is that if I don't want to do that, so let's say I'm in the QS role, some companies just don't want the QS having to think about what goes on the account side of the business, I can also submit for approval. Okay, or we can build approval workflows. Approval workflows basically say that based on the value or based on the user, it has to go through a workflow. In other words, if it's belonged to that project, it must go to contracts manager before it goes to accounts. If it's above 10 grand, it must go to director before it goes to account. that type of thing. So we can do that at the PO, or we can do that on the invoice through what we call the approvals workflows. Okay, so there's different situations for different companies depending on what your process is. There, we can sort of map into your process and sort of design that approval process around that as well. Ultimately, if you click into your documents folders here in LiveCosts, we're going to have all your quotes that are coming in, segmented by project, timeline, so on and so forth. If some companies will carry stock, all the requisitions that are coming in from site will be pinged in here as well. So basically the guys on the mobile app are sending is in requests. They're all segmented by project as well. All the purchase orders are coming in, which purchase orders have been delivered, sent, part delivered, still open by project, so on and so forth. And then in the invoice section here, we'll have that nice little link into what happens in the accounting side of the business. Okay, so if I click on that little sync button there and I search for the approved invoices, you'll see that our invoice has now gone into the accounts team in Xero, and I can click in if I have permission to click in, of course, into Xero. I can then click across into Xero. So this is what our accounts team will see. So what this does is it creates a nice line in the sand between what's happening on the day-to-day operational side of the project versus what the accounts team needs. So the accounts team really need to see these when they're good to be paid or when they're approved. So once I'm approving them in LiveCosts, it then recreates that data here. In this case, it's in Xero, and you can see what happens. I've sent across the line items to accounts. I've sent across the PDF there, which is the actual invoice. Everything is basically tracked. Now, if there's a question on the account side and they want to understand where this came from, through our integration here, I can always link back to the LiveCosts project on top of each invoice. So if I put my accounts hat on now, I want to know where this invoice came from, I can just click back in through that link and I can say, okay, this is who raised the order, there's who took the delivery in, here's all the project and costing information, here's the line items, even down to what the line items have fluctuated. So, Xero will give me my high level bookkeeping view. And then LiveCosts just drills into that from the project's perspective and gives me all the sort of construction context to that build in, should I need to drop in. Okay. So what that does for us is it means that every invoice that comes in, we can basically just drag and drop the invoice or have the suppliers email the invoice straight in. Through that AI algorithm, then we're going to do the extraction of all the data. We'll then pick up the order, we'll pick up a delivery, we'll analyze the items and we collect the items and against that particular catalog. And then once it's been approved in LiveCosts, we then can recreate that data. So the accounts team can then go and pay that invoice from there in whatever you guys are using on the account side. Okay. So that's a typical order from sort of pre-purchase order. That could be a requisition, or it could have been an RFQ, or it could have worked off a scheduled rate. So there's various different options in terms of how we create the purchase order. We can just create purchase orders on the fly as well. We can create purchase orders off mobile, and we can do, as I said, value caps and all that stuff. So there's LiveCosts, one of our probably strongest points is around that, getting control over that committed cost, because it is the absolute foundation of any good cost control system, is getting a real control around that committed cost. And then everything basically falls in behind that. So the delivery of that can fall in behind that. The invoice then can match in behind that. The analysis of whatever data is on them documents can fall in behind that as well. Okay. Other items on LiveCosts as well will be the tracking of time. So time is broke down in LiveCosts into a few different aspects. Okay, so this is the time section. You can track your employees. They're generally guys on the payroll. Okay, you're a supplier of time, which we call it supplier time because it could be the agency, it could be a subbie on a day rate, so on and so forth, but they basically supply us time. And then it's equipment. Okay, so any of our own plant that we want to track on the project as well. Okay, so in time, we can basically turn that section on. A couple of options. You can use the app for the guys to basically fill out the timesheets is one option. So when I come across the app, I'll have the option to either fill out as a supervisor, fill out everyone's timesheet, or we can lock it into individuals, which basically means that it's locked into me. Okay, I can send in my time against. We don't have to show them the whole bill. We don't have to show them everything. We can just basically tick on the app what items we want to be able to allocate time to. So if I just search for plastering here, for example, we can just select what elements of the bill do we want this user to be able to allocate time to? It just makes it more user friendly on that user site. But basically, I can fill out a timesheet. I can say I was on site today. I'm working on plastering, and I was, company default working hours are 8:30 to 5. But today I had to work till 5:30, or today I worked till 9 because I didn't start till 9 because I was late, or so on and so forth. So we can gather all this data through our mobile app. We can do it daily. We can do it weekly, so on and so forth. Individuals can do it. Supervisors can do it, various options there. And in a similar way to how this inbox works, where we're just letting AI ping in our receipts and ping in our invoices, this timesheets is just gathering that time related data for us. So it lands in this case, under the employees. I use the daily option rather than the weekly option, and we land them in draft. Okay, draft basically saying that here's the hours that came in. We're doing them individually, so we're tracking them every day. I can see this guy was late, and I can basically track that, and I can approve that. So that links that up to the project and up to the heading. So in other words, from a reporting perspective, first of all, from a payroll perspective, we can just run an overview, and we can see, where were the lads working on, this date to this date, and that can run a payroll report. That's one thing. But from the actual project's tracking perspective, we can always track the actual man hours against it. So if I want to know what I priced for, again, where did the cost come from versus what the actual cost was on site, I can search in and say, I want to understand exactly what happened on the plastering side of this project, select that heading, and I can basically see the total hours that we've done on the project versus the total cost. Okay, so that's the option of where we go individually. The other option is we can just have the weekly timesheet here. So a weekly timesheet would do the same thing. We can say, okay, this is this guy's hours for last week. Okay, I want to take a copy of last week's timesheet. I'm going to move it across to next week because he's generally working on the same project week in, week out for us. But there might be some edits to that, which I can just jump in here and say, okay, just edit this day and say he was out on this project instead of this project, so on and so forth. And that's just doing it in a weekly view. The other option is we can do what's called a bulk entry. And bulk entry allows us to do one of two things. If we're not too concerned about tracking them every day, we can literally just retrospectively grab the payroll costs and just basically deploy that onto the project. And it doesn't even have to be at an individual level. We could say, listen, the guys on that project were out there last week, and the payroll cost was 10 grand or whatever it is. We can just deploy that sum onto that project as well. And then the other option is that some companies will use biometric face recognition stuff and all this type of stuff that's out there. We don't do that, right? So if that is a requirement on the project you're on, and you want to use a third party to basically track where the guys are in terms of what hours have been done on which project, we can just take the report from that system. We can upload it straight in against the budget. So in other words, we're using that system for seeing where the guys are, but we also want to see how much it's costing us against the project and against the original budget. So in other words, you can basically, let's say you're using Blip or Connect Teams or something like that. That will generate us a CSV report at the end of each week. We can literally just take that report in and just import that straight to LiveCosts and do it that way. So when it comes to the hours, we can do them in LiveCosts through our app every day, give the guys the ability to track their time. We can do weekly timesheets, or as I said, we can do bulk entries, and bulk entries work in two ways, essentially. One is I'm just going to retrospectively pop in a labor cost here of what happened on the project last week. Or, as I said, the second option being I'm using a third party here, and I want to just upload what I took from that system straight to LiveCosts, so I can actually track a cost against that budget as well. Okay. If they're a subby, we can do the same thing. So same features, okay, daily, weekly, bulk entry. But this works well in terms of reconciling. Well, okay, let's say example is we've got a guy on site working on a day rate, and he's sending us in invoices every 2 weeks. One of the things that we see from working through pilots with companies where we get to sort of work tight with them is that can be one where we can see leakage, right? So guys are just sending in hours, and there's no real watertight system to see what was actually done on the project versus what's being paid for here, right? So this allows us to track the time, okay, in the same way. But what we'll do in here is when that invoice comes in, we'll simply be able to just say, okay, search for a subby's name, okay, search for, let's just say we had a Sparks on a job, and we just put them on a day rate, search for the date range of the invoice that he sent me, and we'll be able to see that this project manager on this project has basically said this guy was on site in that date range for 99 hours. The invoice value is 3,960. So it's just a way then to reconcile. What we do is we connect the bill to the time entry, and we just make sure that someone on our side of the company is logging the time, or the subcontractor can log the time and we can approve it. That works too. But basically, there is a log and there's a record of the actual time that was done on the project. And then when that invoice comes in, this was very simple. Then we just basically scan the invoice in, and the invoice links up to that time entry as well. Okay. The third item within time is this item here called equipment. So this is built for managing any of your own plant and equipment. How it works is down here, you've got your equipment section. This allows us to build a database of all the equipment that we, own. In here, then I can, one example, let's say I've got this little digger, for example, give it a name, give it a description, manufacturer, model number, all that type of stuff. So this, again, in a similar way, the catalog is being used to track material data. The equipment section is being used to track any plant costs as well. So what we can do is we can set up the rate on that, calculate the cost of how much that digger costs us, for example, what's the life expectancy on that digger, ultimately when it's on site, how much does it cost us to have it there. And then very simply, we can just deploy it onto the project in the exact same way. So we work with quite a lot of civils contractors. They do use the data entry in that case, because that digger could be moving around from different road projects or different elements of the project. So in the civils example, the plant is can be moving around. Some of the guys are doing roads, for example. So it's the diggers on the move. In other cases, we work with a lot of housing developers where that digger is literally going to be out there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it might be. And then in that situation there, we can do the sort of bulk entry. So again, the same features are available. Do you want to track this digger every day? Do you need to just track it on a weekly? So it's, a project manager, for example, will tell us what plant is on their project on a weekly basis, and that's fine. We're going to track it that way. Or we can track the as I say, the bulk entry by going in, and that can be like a retrospective entry as well, such as that digger was on my project for 100 hours. Great, that will go costed it against the estimate then as well. So we can basically see that on the reports as well. Okay, in the subcontract sense, again, LiveCosts will work well there, because what we'll do is we can have a couple of views on this. I'll just show you on the dashboards. I can set up obviously my headings for any particular subcontracts. So let's just say, I've carved out the mech and elect, for example. There's a budget attached to that. That gets sent out as a PO. The PO is the committed cost. And then basically based on the PO, then every time that subcontractor drags and drops an invoice or emails us an invoice, it will connect back up to that particular heading. Okay, so that will tell me very clearly how much I've paid and how much I have left to pay. So very simple. In other words, the PO value is the agreed cost we have with the subcontractor, and then every invoice that comes in against that will basically just make those deductions. Okay, and then the other side of that is any variations to that. So if we hit site, you can see here I'm being told that this particular cost has 7 variations that have happened since it started, and the variations will be listed here, and they'll be telling me what the impact was on the with the subcontractor and what the impact was on the contract value. So in these little moving tabs here, on this side, you've got phases. Phases are the original budgets that come in. The next tab you have is variations. So that allows me to make changes to these, but also see the changes happen on the project and see how much it costs us to make them changes and what the impact was on the contract value. So I always have that visual here of what the starting contract value was, how much the changes were, so the variational changes that I had with the client, and what the current contract value sits at. Okay, so that's where that figure there of 146 grand is coming from, basically the variation tab that I'm tracking all the change that happened to the original bill that came in from Cubit. This is all what's happened since we hit the project, and this is the updated cost to that. Okay, so the other view of that from a subcontract perspective is if I click into the orders here, if we're agreeing prices with subbies, we're issuing purchase orders for that. If I search for the subby's name, I'll just say the electrical contractor here for the moment, I'll see all the work they have on for us on any project, and I can also then drill into that and start to see what's happening at the individual heading level. So this will be what we call a line item view. So it'll tell me that this is the guy in our company that agreed to this particular subby on this project under that cost heading on this date to this amount of work. So we agreed a 90 grand sum. And simply what's happening is that using the AI scan will basically just recognize that, and it connects it up to this contract and makes that deduction for me. So nice and simply, the amount we agreed was worth 90 grand. Here's your invoices that have come in, and I have a balance with that particular subby of 10 grand. So again, that's what we call a line item view, or the previous one was the dashboard view, where I could just use the amber and green. Either way, we just want to clearly be able to see, here's what I agreed to pay, here's what I've paid to date, and this is what's left to pay with that particular subby. The other elements then are basically where this starts to really come together. So you've got your reporting, and you've also got your income, okay? If you're connected to, let's go back to our website for a second. If you're connected to one of these majors, but we sort of can work with any account system really, but if you're connected to one of these, we have an off-the-shelf API, which basically pulls in all the income as well. So it just syncs across. If you're working with something that isn't one of them, we can certainly do it, but it's not what we call an off-the-shelf API. So if you're working on one of them, really simply, I'll show you how it works. So in Xero, being the example that I'm using today, our accounts team will be working in the tool that they like, which is, obviously your accounts product or your ERP, and they're doing their thing. They're raising their invoices, and they're using this for the general day-to-day bookkeeping. So any transaction, any sales transactions, any revenue that's been, so if I've used LiveCosts to basically, put a claim together, and then there's a record of that on the account side, it basically connects that live data to LiveCosts. So if I go back to my documents section, and we're scanning across all our invoices, and when they're approved, it tells me which ones have gone to the accounts team. It tells me which ones have still to be unsynced, so these haven't gone to the accounts team, and I can send them across. So basically, I'm sending all approved costs over there. And then next door to that is what we call these client invoices. Okay, so once the invoice is raised through our account system, I'll be able to see what the value was. I'll be able to see how much they paid off it, and I'll be able to see how much was reconciled. Now, the beauty about Xero and QuickBooks and these systems is they have that sort of live connection into our bank account as well. So as that, as this is being reconciled if I'm on the accounts team here, and I can basically say that, that 27 grand that's outstanding, I'll show you basically here. So you can see in LiveCosts here, it's telling me that we are still owed 27 grand of that particular invoice. So in other words, it tells me that it was 100 grand of a claim done. There was 73 grand paid off it, and the client has withheld 27 grand. So that's showing me that on, again, that line item view. But if I click in here onto the dashboard, I would see that on the dashboard as well. On the income line here, we have a live view, which would say the same thing, 73 grand is being paid, and the client still owes us 27 grand. So we have 27 grand of an outstanding invoice with the client, and this is tracking that now against that, the contract value. So if that's paid in Xero, now again, the nice thing about Xero is that it reconciles to the bank, which means that when it hits the bank, Xero will basically give you a similar auto reconciliation there. So in other words, once the accounts team approve that is actually being done, it's basically being reconciled. Well, what will happen then is obviously that reflects back to our dashboard. Okay, so that 27 grand then, Xero will just basically tell us that 27 grand has been paid, and then obviously that reflects onto that project's dashboard. So from the accounts, from the management perspective of the project, I don't need to be fully connected to the accounts team. They'll be doing their thing in terms of chasing invoices, chasing payments, and I'll be able to see here exactly what's happening, about basically what's being paid, what's outstanding, all that type of stuff, and that feeds into then the report section in LiveCosts as well. So there's a few reports that we can run. Obviously the project P&L being the main one, so we can click in here. We can basically track the profitability per project. That being one of the main ones. A line item report. So a line item report is allowing us to do what we call a search across. So an example of that would be if I search a product code. So let's just say I want to see all the data we have on a keyword called cement 25 kg. So basically want to see how much we pay for a bag of concrete. All that data will be in there. I can see who the best supplier is, how much has that bag of concrete gone up over time, how many bags of concrete did we use on that project, or how many bags of concrete went in to the groundworks section of that project. Again, if I want to track it back to what was estimated, I can run what we call line item report. So this is tracking all the line items that were taken in off invoices or quotes, and I can segment it by invoice or by quote, so on and so forth. So this is tracking again all the materials that are being used against the projects as well. You've got your cost reporting section where I can just basically again run any live reports from here. So if I was doing a claim, for example, I just can search the project and say, okay, I want to see how much we spent or what happened on the project between this date and that date. I want to search only these types of costs. If I want to segment the costs, or I want to hone into a particular area of the project, we can do all that from there, and we can take the reports out as CSVs and PDFs. And we'll also have those reports on that dashboard view. So this dashboard view is your project. I should say your individual project view. So it's telling me, of course, what's happening live on the project. And then, of course, we can roll that up to your home screen, which just gives me a sort of a more combined view of, okay, here's all the projects that are currently running at the moment. Here's a dashboard view of what's happening in terms of how much we've brought in, how much we have in outstanding bills at the moment with all the clients, how much we've spent, what we've committed to spend, what our sort of percentage of spend is in terms of what we spend on materials across labor and subcontractors and plant, our budget fee actual performance, our budget alerts. Obviously, we talked about traffic light system, red being not good. So if once we get an alert on a budget, it just means that the budget that was set on this has now been reached. So we can basically get that in real time as well. And that works, I should say, that works off the commitment rather than the invoice, of course. So once the PO gets raised, if the PO exceeds the budget value, we just get an alert about that. We can actually stop the PO going out as well. So some companies will set protections in place to say certain users can't exceed the budget. So in other words, let's say I'm the QS, but I'm not involved in sort of day-to-day procurement. What we can do there is we can say, well, let that come back to me first before that actually happens, because it basically needs to be looked at as well. So we can stop POs going out until it's reviewed by a user. For example, this is your push order activity. Then POs have gone out, problems with deliveries, all that type of stuff. So we can sort of segment and put visuals on that data as well. Couple of other things in there, like if companies are carrying stock, stock can be the project as well. So an example of that, we work with quite a lot of housing developers, and they might go and, let's say, insulation being an example we had recently, where they just went and purchased the whole container of insulation, landed the container on the project. Then obviously the container needs to be distributed now across different areas of projects, like different phases of the project and all that type of stuff. So what they do is they used to use stock, whereby the container lands on the project. That's a cost now to the company, but it's not a cost deployed onto the project just yet. So it sits in stock. And then as that insulation is being drawn out of the container and being used on different areas, we can then distribute it accurately onto the project, and accurately against different, in their case, it was different house types. So we can actually land it in stock as a cost, hold that cost in as a project cost sitting in stock, but not yet distributed into the individual phases. And then as it's being used, the lads can just, through the mobile app as well, they can just tell us what's happening there as well. Okay. That's pretty much it. What I might do is I might just stall it at that. There is a couple of things, other things in LiveCosts. What I will mention as well is that we allow companies to test this in a couple of different ways. One is there's a sort of a free trial. A free trial is, it's what we call an unsupported trial environment, whereby you just jump in yourself if you want to fire in a few invoices and just get a feel for the product. That's what we call it's an unsupported 14-day free trial. The one that's the popular one is what we call a pilot. A pilot is basically a 6-week hands-on test where we put our team with your team. In other words, what we would do, so this is the sterling price, this is the euro price. This is basically what we do over a period of time, where we basically say, okay, your team, our team, let's sit down, let's work it out. What do you guys need from this? What's the problems you have in the company? And then we'll just catch up each week and work through it. So week 1, we would focus on the integration with Cubit. How is this estimates, how are they going to flow through? What is the structure in the project? We can show you what that will look like from a reporting perspective. We basically just get the foundational stuff right on call 1. And then call 2, the following week, we'll catch back up. We might have procurement involved, where we can start to actually issue some purchase orders. Week 3, we're into invoice scanning, so we can start to reconcile them and basically do the first batch with you. So, we always look to use real life data on this. So we'll go through and show you how all this reconciles together. Week 4, we can talk about labor management, plant management. Week 5, we're on to subcontractors. And then by the end of the pilot, it can be fully evaluated. It can be tested in a hopefully like a real life environment. And then from there, the company can make a decision. A, does this save us time or not? And then B, I suppose one of the things that we like to get to is getting you guys to a decision fairly quickly whether this is a good idea or not, because there's nothing worse, I suppose, than buying a subscription, which LiveCosts is. It works on a monthly subscription, and then taking 9 months or 10 months to figure out that that's actually isn't going to work for you. So the pilot has been very successful for us in terms of us getting our hands-on experience. We've got 20,000 euros on LiveCosts. My background is construction. The other guys' backgrounds are construction. Our trainers are like ex heads of finance for construction firms. So everyone that we put on a call, which will have that experience of being in your seat, and then we can just show you how other companies are getting the most out of LiveCosts. So the pilot has been successful for us. We do charge for it because at the end of it, there is no additional onboarding charges with LiveCosts. You've basically been fully trained. The whole team have been fully trained. We leave all the training videos with you. We spend a lot of our own personal time on the pilot as well, making sure that we can get to that value point with you as well. So there's 2 real testing options. One, unsupported free trial, just jump in and fire a few invoices at it, and that's one option. Option 2, if you want to get like into a more sort of driven process with support, where we're catching up with you each week and you have 24/7 access to our help center and all that type of stuff, so we can do like what we call a proper testing and stress test your current system against LiveCosts. Test the AI out as well. There's a lot of people with AI can be skeptical, like does it really do that? Is it going to be any good? So we can test all that for us as well, with real quotes, real RFQs, real invoices, all that stuff as well. Okay, so the option with that as well is I will leave my email here. I'm going to leave some time as well if there's any questions. But in terms of next, we can do like a 30 or a 60-minute demo, and the demos can be tailored to your individual company. Obviously, we've got a bunch of different companies that use LiveCosts, from main contracting into the trades, the civils guys. So we can customize that demo to your company. You can obviously bring the team on if you think this looks sort of interesting. Maybe I'll bring on a couple of the team, show them what it's all about. We can do that, and then we can discuss, I suppose, those testing options in more details as well. So that's about LiveCosts. We also will send out the recording. So if you wanted to send out the recording of this as well, we can do that. What I might do is I might just stop at that point and just open up to see if there's any questions coming in as well.
Thanks, Kieran. That was really, really good. I thought that was really great. I want to just point out to everyone, like, that's the 3rd or 4th time I've seen that demo, and every time I see the demo, there's new features in that. So the rate of development in LiveCosts seems to be really, really strong. Like, every time I watch that demo, there's something new. I guarantee if I watch that again in 6 months, there'll be something new in that again. As Kieran said there, if you're happy, that's enough. That's great. You're welcome to leave. I think there's one question down there, Kieran. I can't see it, but maybe you can.
Yeah, I can see it there from Damien. It's just a question around is it compatible with AFAS? No, compatible. I suppose, Damien, compatible, and I'm happy to take this offline as well. That's my email there was kieran@livecosts.com. Compatible is we can be compatible to anything. In terms of, like, if we're talking compatible in terms of a CSV upload or download. So there's some accounting products on the market there that we just won't do integration to. It doesn't make any business sense. The cost of the integration and the manager of the integration for the volume of customers that want it just doesn't make business sense to us. So what we'll always do to be compatible with systems that we just don't have enough, I suppose, demand for, is we'll just do like a CSV upload. So for example, if it's an account system, we can just get all the invoices scanned in through LiveCosts, get them all approved, get them into a folder within LiveCosts, and then just download them in bulk and upload them to the accounts team. So that's not a direct link in terms of an API, but it is the same outcome. He says we're using LiveCosts to be the operational tool on the project. We're saving them into a file, and it's being uploaded to accounts, and that works across for labor as well. We've got a bunch of companies that would use third-party labor systems that I mentioned around the biometric stuff and all that type of stuff. So we're not compatible in a sense of we haven't got a direct API, but we can just take the data in a CSV format and we can upload it from there. So I hope that answers that. If it doesn't, as I said, send me an email, and happy to jump on a call and work through it as well.
Anyone have any other questions in for Kieran before we let him go? There's
Okay.
no popped in. Yeah, there's a few popping in there.
Okay. So if my BOQ is in Excel file rather than Cubit, can the file be integrated, for example, PQS will supply the BOQ? Yes. So what we've two options there, Paul. So basically the question is basically if the BOQ isn't in Cubit, so it's come in some other format. Let's say it's in an Excel file. What we can do there is we can do an upload to a CSV. So we'll give you a template essentially, Paul. We'll say, okay, this is the way the BOQ has to come in. Obviously, it has to be in a structure to work, to be displayed on that dashboard. So we'll give you a template, and then basically you can work that template into LiveCosts. But yes, like good example of that is we've got a bunch of companies that are in the plumbing and mech elect, and they all use different types of estimating systems. So the way them budgets are coming to us are in different types of formats. So the answer is yes, we can do it in what we call phase templates, or we can do it through a CSV uploads as well. But again, if you want to see that, and actually you can send me to me in advance, happy to sort of book in a separate call and just show you how that works as well.
I would have preferred that answer to be no, everybody should buy Cubit, just so you're aware, but that's fine.
Yeah.
There's two more there, I think.
One is just a thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. As I said, if there's any, like, every company will have different sort of use cases and all that stuff. That's where I suppose the personal demos come in, as we can there won't be much that we haven't seen already. So happy to sort of have a more customizable demo, have a look at how you're pricing your work, how it's being tracked today, what account system are you using, how is the labor tracked, and then we can sort of show you how it works in that environment as well. Okay.
That seems like it to me. That's great. That was really helpful. Lisa's just asking, is this recorded? Yes, Lisa. Kieran recorded it, and we'll be sending it out to everybody. So if you want to watch it again, or if you want to forward it on to somebody else who in your company you think this might be really good and they weren't thinking about coming to this meeting, absolutely no problems. As Kieran said, you can contact him directly. You can contact us at BSS, and we'll forward your information on to Kieran, and he'll be in touch. Great. So thanks everybody for your time, I think, and we'll let this man go have a cup of tea, because I know that's difficult when you have to demo that intently for so long. And yeah, hopefully everybody found that as good as I did.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.